Thank you very much for allowing us to come and interview you today. If you'd like to start by telling us about when you came to Bedford and what Kempston, what general practice was like in those days, and then perhaps we can move on to your experiences over the years.
Fine. Yeah, I came to Kempston in 1958. I was looking for a job, and I came in answer to an advert because the practice of Dr. Richards, Patterson McCaskill, Dr. Richards was no longer well enough to do his job. And I guess the two younger guys felt they wanted somebody to do it for him because they were fed up with doing it on their own. So I came to Kempston. I was finishing a job 6 months I'd been doing out in Basingstoke, where I worked for the 7 meanest doctors in the entire United Kingdom, if my memory serves me correctly. It was good fun because there was nothing else to do in Basingstoke. It was such a dump other than work, day or night, which suited the doctors down there very well. But I came here because I answered an advert because it looked an interesting practice in that it was urban and rural. Over 40% of the practice was described as rural, which makes a great difference to just driving down the streets all day. And when I got here, I liked the chaps that I met. I came here and I was interviewed by the two younger doctors, and in those days it was very difficult to get a job in general practice because there were no allowances to the original principal for the fact that giving him a job took away part of his income. In other words, he became less well off if he employed you, or even less well off still if he took you as a partner, which they were very reluctant to do. So it was quite a difficult place, a difficult position to be in. But one of the doctors interviewing me was fairly voluble, and the end of it, the other chap sidled up and says, "Oh," he says, "if you come here and you like it, I'll see that you're treated right." And there was something about this chap that I believed. Wouldn't normally, because it was very tough. But there was something about him that I thought, right, I'll give this a go. Then they said the other magic words: "We're going to build a purpose-built surgery." Now this was virtually unheard of at the time. In 1958, doctors tended to practice out of their back room and had miserable levels of equipment. Now before I came here, I'd done a lot of jobs and worked in a lot of fields of medicine because I realised after a bit that there was no area of medicine that I wasn't interested in and that I was prepared to give up for good. So I wasn't prepared to specialise in a number of things that had been suggested for me to do. For example, they suggested I specialise in obstetrics and gynecology. But the idea of never treating another man, another child, or another old person was just a ghastly thought. And I really wasn't prepared to do that. They even suggested one time I ought to specialise in psychiatry. "You're good at this, Barber." "Oh yes, but just dealing with loons forever would, frankly, drive you up the wall." So, given this, and the magic words, I thought, a doctor, you see, is only as good at any given time as the amount of decent kit he's got available to him. I got married about 6 weeks later. Quite interesting, I fixed my wedding date with my wife, and the partner says, "Oh, you can't do it then because we're all on holiday, you're going to have to look after the practice." Can you imagine a young guy coming today to a practice? I mean, you've got to change your wedding date. They wouldn't put up with it, would they? And but I mean, okay, we brought it forward a week. That's right. My wife still can't realise that we got married on the 12th of July, not the 19th. But never mind. Even 6 years later, you know.
What year was that? Sorry,
this is 58.
58.
And so we changed our wedding day to fit in with that. And then, of course, we were given actually a bedroom. We lived in the practice house, and my wife got a job at the South Wing, because she was a sister. As I say, general practice then was very different. The equipment, Dr. Richard's surgery was really quite good, like quite well equipped. You could do quite a lot in it. It was a decent size and it was clean. So it was, there was a lot to be said for it. But with 3 of us rotating through it, we had therefore a lot of branch surgeries, because in those days, you see, nobody had a car. And so you did a lot more visiting than you do now. Nobody had a telephone either. So you used to have to carry tuppences around with you to use the public phone box if you wanted to get an ambulance for something.
Oh, God.
Because in those days, frankly, people expected to be born at home, they expected to die there, and they expected about 99% of their medical treatment in between times in their home. Nobody wanted to go to the hospital because the old people say, oh no, don't come out of there, doctor, you go there to die, I don't want to go there, I'd rather stay here, thank you very much. And so, in a way, this is a very fulfilling environment, if you can follow that. It did mean to say that in order to get nearer the patients, we did have a number of branch surgeries. We had one in Harrington Road, where Dr. McCaskill lives. We had one in Stuartby. We had one in Marston. We had one in Cranfield. The one in Stuartby was a shed. It was an unlined shed. I remember it well at the end of Churchill Close. And considering that this is a company that made umpteen million bricks a day, the fact they couldn't provide anything other than a wooden shed for surgery showed that they didn't have the greatest commitment to this.
No, I'll say.
However, it was quite amusing because it was unlined and the wind used to whistle through and the snow would actually occasionally drift through the boards as well. And everything would freeze up in winter. There was a tap next door to the room one used as a consulting room. And that all used to freeze up in a fairly lovely cascade because if the pipes burst, it was absolutely superb. And then for heating, we had a Valor stove which you put a pot on to sterilise water and stuff in. It was all very primitive, and if you actually wanted to do anything, you told the patient, go home, put the kettle on so I've got some hot water, and I'll come and do it in your house. So you did most of anything you were going to do to anybody in their home, really. So it was very superficial consultations that you could do, because I don't think we actually had a couch in there. Or perhaps he did, I can't remember, an examination couch now. Anyway, for, again, the surgery at Marston, I didn't do Marston, I did Stuartby and Cranfield twice a week in each. Twice a week, once a week in Stuartby, once a week in Cranfield. The Marston surgery was in somebody's front room, and seemed to consist entirely of lads who wanted to skive off school and have their plantar warts treated. But Cranfield was quite good. That again was a wooden shed, but it was lined. It was a sort of very decent piece of accommodation, really. There was a nice couch, there was a decent desk, there was a decent light, steriliser, wash basin, and one could have a decent look at people there, so that was quite good. Marston, you couldn't, and if you wanted to examine anybody, you told them to go home and get their things off, and you would come and look at them there. So, as I say, the whole thing was very different. You were also expected to be an accomplished obstetrician, which I'd done quite a lot of this in my time. I was quite good at it. And it reminded me, because it's only recently that I've hocked in my long-handled Milne Murray obstetric forceps to the Higgins, because they really like to put them on show.
Sorry, what's that?
My long-handled Milne Murray obstetric forceps, about this long, for extracting babies fairly high up in the lady's pelvis. You do a caesarean section these days. I mean, these things, which we used to do quite gaily on the district. But I mean, brought to my notice quite recently, I was at the Addison Centre, where I seem to spend half my life these days. And who should come in with a lady said, do you remember Dr. Barber? It's 50 years ago next Saturday since you came and delivered my twins. I thought, really, that made me feel terribly young again. Can you imagine delivering twins on the district now? One went to these things quite happily because one had done a lot of this sort of thing and one had confidence and one knew what one was doing. But these days it's been an entirely different ballgame. And nobody has a baby at home now, really. And that's the way it's gone. Part of this, of course, is politics, because when the gynecologists, if they wanted lots of money for their unit at the North Wing, had to show they were doing lots and lots of work. So they said, no, all babies need to be delivered in hospital now. And so, of course, one's skills atrophied, one's hand, as they say, loses its cunning if one doesn't use it all the time. All little boys in those days were circumcised, and when you delivered the baby home, said, I'll be enough money to do the little laddie, darling, and along you would go and circumcise the child. Now this is an operation which isn't done anymore. So in my later years, I was the only person who would actually do it anywhere, so I had a small private practice in doing this for people who wanted it done for religious reasons. I wasn't going to ask them why or queer if they wanted it done. We would do it for them. That was it, for virtually nothing, because it was all part of the service, etc. But assistant. For the first 3 years I was an assistant, and Dr. Richards planned to retire when he was 60. Unfortunately, he went and died of a heart attack 3 days before, which is just a little bit tough. Dr. Richards was the most unusual man, a most extraordinary doctor. But as I say, he came originally about 1930-ish to Stuartby. He had a bike and a camp bed because he didn't have any furniture. He'd arrived from Australia, although he was educated in Scotland. He built up a large practice. He was quite happy to poach anybody's patient, so a lot of the other doctors didn't really approve of him because there was a lot of protocol and talk about medical ethics in those days, which was basically medical ethics in then, certainly when I came here initially, was a method by which the older established doctors kept the younger ones down and under their thumb and short of money. That's what medical ethics was in practice, actually. They like to dress it up as something really terribly professional behaviour, but that's what it really was. However, he always treated me very well. At the end of the 3 years, by which time I was getting known in the practice, I was offered a partnership, which obviously I accepted, and we then had to set about deciding where we were going to go. We'd been promised a bit of land at the top of King Street by Mrs. Dolling, who lived in the bungalow at number 2 and had 2 delightful daughters, and she kept her promise. They know the doctors can have that for their surgery. And we got this land quite cheaply, I guess.
Reasonable price.
And very, very nice lady indeed, because none of us got any money, because we all the other parts seemed to have quite a lot of children one way between them. We then set about designing a surgery, because there weren't any purpose-built surgeries then. There were no previous designs to go and look at, no other surgeries to go and look at to get your idea about what you wanted to produce. We had good relations at the time with the Cranfield School of Management, which was housed in what was then called the School of Aeronautics, now called Cranfield Postgraduate University.
I know it, yes.
And we went up there, and the chaps came, we do a time and motion study and look at what you can do with this bit of land. So they draw up the plans, and we looked at these and we thought, well, it might be very efficient, but it won't work for doctors, you see, because people do need a little bit of privacy somewhere along the line. They come to see us. So Dr. Patterson effectively designed this on the back of an envelope. We decided that we would have separate examination rooms at our surgical consulting rooms. We would have the large windows on the side where we got the best light, so that we sat with that behind us, so as the patient came through the door, the light was on them, because you can tell an awful lot from the way a patient moves and looks as they come through the door about whether they're really ill or what, before you ask any questions even. So we decided that we would have separate examining rooms as well, and then there would be a waiting room, an office, and we would have a treatment room and an operating theatre. because we all like doing minor surgery one way or another, because we did quite a lot between us. We passed the planners, and after a struggle we got it built to open in October 1961, when I became a partner on that day, I think. And it was the day when you had sort of tiles on the floor and so forth, and it was the day of stiletto heels. That was the fashion. And of course these drilled holes in the ordinary sort of floors, and so we put it, this is a new say, would ladies in stiletto heels kindly take them off when they come in. So you were visited by ladies carrying their stiletto heels in one hand and in sort of pink fluffy slippers in the other on their feet, and looking very smart with it too, actually. Which I still think is really quite fun. The patients all joined in and supported this enormously, and frankly it was a huge success because it was a massive advert. Really, it was a massive advert. There's this brand new setup we put up, which was really quite modern for its time. We were able to put decent equipment in it. We had lateral filing system instead of pull-out drawers, which was much more efficient and much quicker to use. And we even had receptionists to greet people rather than just finding their own way in and wandering about and thinking when it was their turn. So it was an entirely new experience. And we also had a little treatment room round the side behind with a little tiny waiting room, a little tiny treatment area with a sink and all this. So you had it fitted with kitchen furniture because it's the most economical, it works better, and it's about a third of the price of clinical furniture, these things. And that was going to be for the district nurse or the nurse when we got one. And things went along very well. This was, we had good lighting, decent examination cash. We could actually look at people reasonably properly. And I remember I bought my first electrocardiograph, portable ECG machine for doing heart tracing. Nobody ever had one of these at the time. It was really quite revolutionary. But I used to do a lot of cardiology in hospital, so I felt I needed one of these. So I bought myself one of these machines, which was quite popular because it made us some money in one way or another, because the director of a large local company decided they all wanted a heart trace done. I mean, these things are done routinely now, but in those days quite rare outside hospital. And therefore they decided they would ask me to do executive examinations on them once a year so that they could get their heart trace done and go along carrying on with their bad habits just as badly as before, when I told them, well, that was all right, it doesn't actually stop you dropping dead as you go down the stairs, so just be careful on the way out. It still can happen no matter what it says. So we that was quite useful in that way. And of course the practice expanded